All right, everybody, welcome to Better Call Paul. So, on behalf of Trident Title, Performance Title, and Apex Training, we are here to bring you this live question and answer session with Trident Title and Performance Title's Paul Krasker, where we are going to focus on settlement questions, title insurance questions, closing questions, anything like that. Paul comes to us with a wealth of knowledge. Obviously, we always like to open it up for a minute or two and let him just kind of chat about what he sees going on, what's going on in the world, and then we'll kind of guide a conversation. If you have any questions, please throw them in the chat so that we can make sure we get things answered by Paul. Mr. Krasker, take it away. What are you seeing going on in the world? What's happening in your world? What's happening with closings and title? What's happening out there?
So I think there are a few big deals that are getting done. And I think those will mark a comfort level in at least the Palm Beach and some of the high-end gated communities. So I think that's going to mark a return to normalcy, and that the bottom isn't falling out, so to speak. So that should be reassuring, and those are going to be of record soon. And I think depending on where you're farming, it's important to keep your eyes out for those, and you might want to send emails out to your clientele to give them that sense that things are starting to return to normal. I sent out an email blast. Apologize if some of you received it, but to a bunch of my clients, and just trying to stay in contact with them. And the summary of the email was, while you're still self-distancing, and if you're at the point where you're as bored as I've been, you really want to do a few different things. And three things I can suggest for you are doing an insurance review of your insurance policies, your homeowner's insurance, car insurance, etc. Things that you could do over the phone very quickly and very easily. Consider refinancing, and consider an estate plan. All of those are things that can basically be accomplished emailing back and forth with people. And if any of you are out there, I always offer discounts to the KW agents, so happy to talk to you about the estate planning. But you should also consider sending out an email to your database to stay in contact with them, to remind them that those things are valid things to be doing these days. And I guess that's my suggestion up front.
Awesome. So 3 great ideas there, guys, for you to be able to reach out to your database with: home insurance, car insurance, and estate planning. Awesome. As far as deal volume, have you seen anything coming back? With a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the force majeure and contracts being canceled and escrow disputes and all those kinds of fun things. Have you been seeing that slow down, and are you seeing any different direction or any different take on that from your end? Or
Yeah, I've seen people either dig their heels in and starting down the path of mediation and litigation, and I think those people will all lose because they're not going to get to court for 6 months or so, and the money's going to sit there on both sides, and people are going to accrue legal fees on both sides. And I think all the people who wanted to resolve it, the buyers who just wanted to walk away, have walked away and settled in some fashion with the sellers, whether they got their deposits back or not. At least it's done, and they're moving forward. Today was the first day I received a call from a buyer who walked away from a prior deal saying, I think I'd like to make an offer again. So interesting.
what does that process look like for them then? They had already settled and done something with escrow, or how did that one work? If you can.
Yeah, because they were buying in a condominium, and because the selling agent did not provide them with all of the documentation that was required under the Condominium Act and the condo rider, I was able to easily get 100% of their money back for them. So they're now in a position where they can make an offer on the same condo. Good luck trying to get those sellers to sign again, or go to another unit, and I think that's what they're doing now.
Understood. Anybody with any questions or anything that they want to make sure that we touch on or get answered? I have a handful of people in here would like to get some questions from you guys about what you're seeing out there, anything you want to talk about and bring up. Nancy, anything on the broker side or anything coming that you want to chat about?
Unmute me. Okay. I had 2 issues today.
Okay.
One came from, and I thought I had answers for both. One, I don't know what happened. The other one I do. One was the agent was buying a bank foreclosed property and using an FHA 201, I believe it is, for the
203K, the repair?
Yes. The bank was supposed to close. Buyer wasn't ready to close. The bank said, okay, we'll give you an extension for 2 weeks, but you have to give up your deposit. And I said, how much is the deposit? $5,000. First time home buyer. I said, they can't give up their deposit because they're afraid they're gonna lose their job. I said, just go back and say, because of the virus where we are, we will gladly do the extension, but we can't give up the deposit. And the bank took it. They gave an extension. The other one, so that was a happy ending. The other one, we had the buyer. They did the walkthrough yesterday. The house was full of trash. I think more so even outside, old bicycles, tools. And the listing agent said that she was going to take care of it. She had a man that was going to come and take all this trash away. Well, he bailed, didn't happen. So they're at the closing table and trash is still in the house. So I said 2 things: hold the seller's check, have them get it out of there and disperse their money later today, or escrow some money to take care of it. Didn't want to do either one. I don't know what happened. I never got a word back. So I'm assuming they settled it one way or the other.
Yeah. So Paul, in a case like that, when the property is not broom swept clean as it's supposed to be, what would you suggest on that, or what is a situation with something like that?
Yeah. So it's interesting because the standard is not broom swept clean anymore. That was the old FARBAR language. The new FARBAR language says that seller shall have removed all personal items and trash from the property.
Well, they didn't.
So yeah, you can either escrow 125% of the cost to take that away, which is what you're legally required to do under the contract. Well, what I like to do, especially if I'm representing a buyer, is take a credit. You get it out yourself, hire somebody else, make sure it's done the way you want it. The last thing you want is the seller going in post-closing after they're disappointed that they didn't get all their money and scrape the floors with the bicycle, or, drop a wrought iron something on the marble floors.
But couldn't the title company hold the seller's check and give it to them at 5 o'clock today? Can't do that.
No. Technically, if you close, you're supposed to release the funds.
Right then.
And the seller could get aggressive with that. But I mean,
I think that's what's happening.
My problem is everybody always wants to hold $250 because that's all it's going to cost to have the, guy from whatever it is, Faith Farm, come pick up the chest of drawer or whatever's in there. But they don't think of the fact that if they drop the chest of drawers down the stairs and they break the stairwell and smash the marble floor,
way more than $250.
It's a $20,000 damage repair. Yeah.
Yeah. What would be buyers?
What would be interject for a second? You got me, Ryan? Can you hear me?
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah. What I used to do, Paul, when I was at the closing table, clients would, there'd be an issue like this. I would not want my client, if I was on a seller's end, I mean, you don't want to hold escrow because it's a pain in the neck for the exact reasons you were just speaking about. And I would say, look, you got to do a credit. There's no way around it. I said, if you want to hold escrow, that's fine, but then I'm charging you an escrow fee. And that usually solved the problem.
Yeah, we've gotten yelled at enough from agents not to start charging escrow fees. They'd kill us, Michael.
What about the buyer's rights on that? Can the buyer just not close and show
Yeah,
a picture and saying it's not closed, or how far can the buyer take it based
Yeah,
on
the buyer turns around and says, hey, if there's an obligation that was your obligation under the contract, we're supposed to reasonably determine the value to complete it and escrow 125%. And you turn around and say, look, I don't know how you're going to damage the house. And if you crack the marble floor, it's $20,000 to replace it. So I don't know how we're going to come up with a number. Either give me a credit, let me do it myself, or we could delay closing for a day. But, you know, if I'm going to be involved on behalf of the buyer, I'm going to ask for an outrageously large escrow.
Correct. Yeah, makes sense.
And Paul, on the flip side of that, I remember when I was a new agent and I had a similar situation, but it was the opposite, where it was the seller who was pretty much going, too bad. So, you know, if the seller were to leave it in that condition, buyer still wants to close, but they want the seller to get all of their stuff out, and seller says, I'm not doing it. Don't close if you don't want to close. Does the buyer have any recourse then?
Yeah, so usually what you do is have somebody like me write a letter that says, you know, you're in default under your obligations under your contract. If you don't do these, then tomorrow morning after you've defaulted, I'm going to file a suit for specific performance. Not only are you going to then take out that trash, but you're also going to pay all of my attorney's fees for having gone through that silly obligation to begin with. So if you want to play this game, we can play this game, but it's eventually going to cost you $5,000, and you're going to end up paying the real estate taxes and insurance on the property for a lot longer than you expected.
Interesting. Great. Anybody else? Any questions or anything that they want to jump in on? I have one here I see on the chat. Two agents have an offer on an REO property that was verbally accepted, and we included an appraisal addendum with a date of April 8th, to coordinate with the inspection period. If they are unable to get the appraisal by when the loan commitment is due within 14 days, is the buyer still protected? They still haven't gotten the sign off from the asset manager.
So if you're using a standard FAR contract and there's a financing contingency, paragraph 8B allows for the buyer to get their money back if the appraisal does not come up to the right number. The language is, buyer gets their money back if the appraisal of the property obtained by buyer's lender is insufficient to meet terms of the loan approval. So technically they could still get their money back if the financing period is over, they've got a conditional loan approval subject to appraisal, and the appraisal comes back low.
Because then they're out on financing contingency, correct? Because then they can't get the loan for the correct amount, and then they're out that way.
Correct.
Anybody else, anything that they have? That looks like that's it from the chat. Anybody else have one that they want to add?
Ryan, should we take a moment to just remind people that next Thursday, it's going to be a different format. We're going to do the FAR contract, and then
2 weeks after that. So what we'll do, guys, we're going to get out a flyer to you guys so that everyone sees that. And what we're going to do is we're going to start adding some contract classes in this slot. So it'll still be the Better Call Paul kind of time. Next week, we're going to do the as-is contract. Then we'll have a normal week of Q&A, and then we'll go back and we will do the listing agreement, then a week of Q&A. Then we're going to hit some addendums. So over the next couple of weeks, we're going to start picking some topics and throwing them in here. The first few weeks of the Q&A were pretty heavy with questions, and now, now that the market is kind of returning to some normalcy, the questions have been a little bit lighter. So we're going to start adding some topics in. Maybe one of them, even we get the clear to sell in here and do some of that.
Great. Terrific.
There we go. So if anybody has any other questions, let us know. If not, quick and easy today. And what we will do is we will move forward with the next few weeks with some topics, and we'll keep you in the loop on that.
Can I butt in with a couple of questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, my phone just kept going off and I didn't get a chance to type. I've been looking at Well, first, looking for properties for investors or for somebody that wants to get into the investing business. So I was looking at a couple of properties today, and one of them said that the buyer would have to sign a hold harmless agreement. And I wanted to know what that was. And then in the same situation, they said that any lien violations on this property will have to be mitigated by the buyer. But then they don't provide a list of the violations.
Okay, Paul, yeah, we get that a lot with investors. Go ahead, Paul.
Sure. I mean, it sounds like it's an investor who bought this. They either bought it at tax deed, foreclosure sale. Sounds like it's got a bunch of lien issues. Sounds like it's got a bunch of code violation issues. And it's really for somebody who's an experienced fix and flip person who has relationships with the county code or the city code officers. It doesn't sound like the kind of thing that you want to advise a first-time investor to jump into if they haven't done this a bunch before. But basically, if they're asking for a hold harmless, that means they want the seller to be held harmless by the buyer for any liability associated with the property. So the seller is going to say, hey, I just bought this 45 days ago. I don't know anything about it. I'm not giving you any reps and warranties. I'm not telling you anything about the property. Good luck.
Okay, no, I totally understand that. This is for my own, I'm not familiar with that language.
Sure.
And then, or propoffers.com, because this is how they wanted the offers to be sent. But to something that I can start working on more, that I have gotten a little training from you guys before on reaching out to people that have been served with lease pendencies.
Yep.
We had a letter that Michelle had sent us last year, maybe in a class.
Okay.
And I wanted to know if you could reshare that letter with us or with me anyways.
I'm not sure who sent that to you, but we can, Ryan.
Yeah, we
Well,
actually
that's what I was asking you about at the beginning.
Yeah, we connected before the class on that. We're going to connect with Michelle and see if we can get access to that letter to be able to get that out to you.
It's just basically a letter that says, if, here are your options. We can help you. Our realtor's not going to charge you, blah, blah, blah,
Yep. Yeah, that gives us options. And then Paul's office can handle short sales and things like that on there as well. That's one of their specialties. One other thing I've always found with those hold harmless, I will tell you sometimes as a flipper myself, is sometimes if the listing agent or the seller feels that there's a chance that there's something that could do harm during the showing, they'll get you to sign those in advance. So for instance, if it's a floor, like there's a second floor house and they're worried about the stability of the floor or the stairs or something, and they don't want you to go in there and get hurt. I've been forced to sign those things many times
–
just for showings.
No, it's not that they don't want you to go in there and get hurt. It's that they don't want you to sue them when you do go in there and get hurt.
They don't want you being liable or them being liable for things like that. Anybody else? Any other questions or anything that you want to bring up or ask Paul?
Ryan, it's Sherry.
Yep.
I have a follow-up question to the appraisal question that Paul just answered a few minutes ago.
Okay.
Paul, you referenced paragraph 18B, but I don't see it. Is it the as-is contract or the other one?
It's in both. It's the same language. In the as-is contract, it's line 119 and 120. It's paragraph 8B, Roman numeral 6, subparagraph 3, to be overly technical.
Okay, I see it now, because that always is a question, is do we need to do an appraisal contingency or not with our buyer's offer?
Yeah, and the answer is, and you have to think it through, because if you're going to get a 50% loan to value loan, and that's all you're going for, but you want to get out if the property is less than the is appraised for less than the purchase price because you just don't want to buy a bad deal, then you have to do a separate appraisal contingency that says if it doesn't appraise at the purchase price, I get to walk. Because in this situation, if you were buying it for $200,000 and you're only getting a mortgage for $100,000 and it comes in at $175,000, the bank's still going to say, yeah, fine, we'll make you the loan for $100,000. It's plenty of equity. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, so okay, so to be safe, when we have a buyer, it's
If you're
okay
getting-
to do, yeah.
So to be safe, if you have a low loan to value, if you're not borrowing 80%, you're borrowing less than 80%, then you want to throw in an appraisal contingency. If you're borrowing 80%, then you know that it has to appraise out at 100% of the purchase price, so you don't need to add that extra appraisal contingency.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Sherry. Anybody else? Any questions before we wrap this up? If you have anything else, please share.
I'll throw one out there since we've got some extra time. That was just like a super random question that my husband got from like some random seller. They were telling us a story about how they got money from a family member to buy this house. And now they want to sell, and the family member is trying to tell them, well, you have to pay me back the money I gave you to buy the house. Naturally, I said, well, did you get a mortgage? I would assume the mortgage company made them sign a gift letter, which they said, yes, they did. And I guess this family member said, well, I'm putting a lien on your house then because you're going to give me my money. And they were just asking us, how is that going to affect them when they try to sell with him having placed a Liz pendants against them?
So if the family member filed a Liz pendants on the property, it's a very risky thing to do because they're liable for slander of title when the homeowner goes in and proves that this was a gift and they have a copy of the gift letter. And as long as there's no simultaneous email from the homeowner saying, thanks so much for writing that gift letter, I know I owe you the money back, but I really appreciate you playing ball with my mortgage company, the homeowner is going to win. And when the homeowner does win, they're not only going to get the Liz pendants taken away, they're going to get damages. So if the market went down, or at the very minimum, the cost of the lawsuit plus the cost of carry for the house from the time period that the Liz pendants was filed to the time that the judge released the Liz pendants will all be considered damages.
And is the Liz pendant something that's going to show up on the title commitment, and then the homeowner is going to have to retain legal representation to fight these people in order to get the title clear and the sale closed?
Absolutely. They're going to have to, as soon as the Liz pendant is filed, they need to file a lawsuit claiming slander of title, attaching a copy of the gift letter saying, I've had a falling out with this family member, and they obviously forgot that this was a gift and are now trying to collect it from me to be spiteful. But Judge, I want you to acknowledge that that they're either going to jail for mortgage fraud, or they're going to waive this amount due and release the Liz pendants. And I want damages. I want, what I was talking about before.
Awesome. I had somebody else say, just want to confirm if someone is putting 20% or lower, then they are covered by the contract, but anything higher, 25% or more, use an addendum that's for the appraisal part.
Correct.
Correct. And someone else said, can you schedule a class on clear to close and investment opportunities? Yeah, what we're going to do, we'll slot in one of the clear to close webinars and trainings in here in one of these same things. As we start adding some of these topics. So we'll start rotating a topic and then a question and answer kind of back and forth every week so that we can give you guys two sort of different strategies with the content until we start going back to normal. And then we'll kind of see what happens, if we start bringing these things back into the physical office or if we keep them digitally. I think we just have to see how our situation kind of evolves, over the next couple of weeks, couple months. Anybody else?
Maria, just to clarify your question, when you say clear to close, I don't think she's talking about clear to sell. Are you referring to like how an investor would do due diligence on, like, say, a foreclosure property? Is that what you mean?
Thank you, Gabrielle. Yes, you know what I meant.
Okay.
Yeah,
Here for you, girl.
Maria, you're talking more about like just investor opportunities and things like that?
Yes.
Well,
A
like
buy-
if she were to find this property that says, you know, buyer's going to sign a hold harmless and they're responsible for all liens, I think she's trying to say, you know, how does the investor check on all that? How do they do due diligence and find out liens and lis pendants and code violations, and how do they do their due diligence so that they know what they're up against? Is that correct, Maria?
No, actually, I wasn't thinking that far ahead on my investors. I was thinking more for our own investments. I remember you holding a class pertaining to buying tax
deeds.
Tax deed.
deeds.
Tax deeds.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Tax
there's a
deeds.
company called Clear to Sell, and I'm happy to do a class on it.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we'll start rotating that in the mix here as well. Last chance, anybody, any other questions before we let Paul go?
Going once, going twice, going 3 times, gone.
All right, everybody. Thank you again on behalf of Performance Title and Trident Title. Thank you to Attorney Paul Krasker for checking in, answering all of our questions.